Hello and welcome to Dad's Our Job podcast, the original footballing podcast for dads by dads. Guys, how are we getting on? We all good?
Yeah, good. Happy to be here joining you guys.
Excellent. So this week we're joined by Joe Street, who is part of the Forfeit Fantasy Draft and is a serial YouTuber. Loses a lot of fantasy football by the sounds of it.
Unfortunately so, yeah.
And you're a Chelsea fan as well, so it kind of touches on really well to what we're going to discuss this week. So, so that's good. Cal, how are you getting on, mate? You're very quiet this week.
I'm always quiet. You know, it's the part of the show I don't like. The introductions, I feel so awkward, and it's the same every single week. But yeah, no, I'm all right. All good. Yeah, I think it's the way you introduce it. It puts me on edge, Adam.
Yeah, I think it is that. I must admit.
You're so professional. It's like you must practice that in the mirror. 100%.
Stop it. No, all my mirrors are broken, mate. You know that.
Oh, mate.
Oh, so England was playing the week just gone. So did you manage to catch the couple of games under Tuchel?
I didn't. I mean, I as you probably know, I'm over in Australia at the minute, and England football generally, every big tournament I get on board, and I'm hugely behind it. As soon as I found out the news about Tuchel, I was very much behind it. But getting up at 4 a.m. for games against England, against Albania and Latvia, were not necessarily top priority. Having said that, I mean, I'm relatively content and happy with how it went. Although performances-wise, it doesn't sound a million miles away from what we kind of used to have before pre-Tuchel. Obviously, Reece James getting that nice little free kick was quite nice. It's nice. Apparently, he's played 14 odd games on the bounce now without being injured, which is a rarity for him.
He hasn't played that long since Wigan, has he?
Well, exactly. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much you can take from those games. I couldn't imagine, to be honest. What do you guys think?
I hate internationals.
Yeah.
Adam knows this. We have this debate every single time. I can't stand it. It just ruins the season. It breaks up the season. I mean, at the moment, I would say that, talking about Arsenal being on a run, but, the league's done anyway. I think in season's gone, I think it ruins people's run-ins and so on. So I hate it. I think it's just sometimes a money spinner. But then again, I know they've got to be done to get into the major tournaments and so on and so forth. But like I say, I think it just breaks up the football. I mean, it was nice, as you just said. Talking about Arsenal players. Obviously Skelly, getting his goal. And to be fair, he you see him in a more forward-thinking sort of position, and getting in behind was quite nice. The run was the pass was nice. The run was nice. Was it the youngest player now to score for England? Is that right? Or second youngest player to score for England?
Youngest debutant, I think. Youngest debutant to score for England.
Yeah. I mean that as a personal or club related attribute or reward or however you want to look at it is nice. Again, it's probably just put another 10-15 million pound on his price tag if he continues to go the way that he's going. Not that we want to sell him, but at some point, if he continues on the the journey that he's going on, or where we feel that he might be going on, at some point we might have to cash in, depending on if we could get a trophy in the door or not. But I think that's a nice side of it, and as Joe just said. From what I heard, I watched the first game. The second game, I didn't actually watch the second game, but there ain't much change from what I've heard, and I know that's I can't speak from not watching the second game. Sorry, but again, it's still too early. What can you say in 2 games as well? It's sort of you're still in that limbo period, isn't it? Really, in my opinion, of what he's going to bring to the squad and going into the tournament. You've got to sort of now look to see what happens in the next games before you really see what happens.
That's the thing, isn't it? I think he's like the more time he has with the players, the more he'll be able to implement his style. And it was, I mean, he obviously did unbelievable at things at Chelsea very, very quickly. And I was frankly absolutely gutted when he left. The whole circumstances behind it were really, really frustrating as a Chelsea fan. You just, when your team's just won the Champions League, and it's not something you want to change at all, and made no sense to me. The whole frustration with kind of Bowley coming in and things being just different to how they were previously was a massive frustration. But he is a good manager, and he's done bits elsewhere, and the fact that he's come in, for me at least, is quite exciting because it means I get to be behind him again, and hopefully, like you said, with a bit more time, they'll be able to change the style of play that England are playing and get proper football, because it kind of, as you say, I think as someone who watches Premier League week in and week out, you get accustomed to watching really good football and players playing with a lot of pride and kind of a lot of passion, and stuff being quick and free flowing. And quite often when the England come around, it's a little bit stagnant. I think it's probably the best word.
Yeah. Do you think that comes from fear? Fear from
possibly that's the thing, because it's like, I guess historically it's a massive step. For any English footballer, playing for the national team is such a massive accolade that all of a sudden it kind of and again, also if you mess up, the media are absolutely on you.
Why do you think we had that? Because I've always questioned this. Obviously going back to like the 90s with the Gaza situation, and then the Lampard and Gerrard, the David Beckham stuff. Why do you think media absolutely jump on? I've always had this question. Why do they always jump on the England players? The way they do that, they build them up to be absolute superstars, and then they just love. I know. Listen, I'm not stupid. I know it sells papers ultimately. People want to read when it's going well. People want to read it, and when they can jump on and make someone a villain, it sells papers. I get it, but like, I'm not being funny. Why is it such a big draw, and how can it make and break players so massively? For me, it's like, well, it's almost like they're doing. It's an honour to play for England. Don't get me wrong, but again, it's also a chance for England to go on and do something good, but then they want to absolutely ruin it on the other hand as well. It's almost like they almost want England to foul so they can sell papers. In my opinion, what do you guys think?
I think that's fair enough. I think generally that's I don't know whether it's different elsewhere in the world. I hear that it is because of the way that either your footballers or just random celebrities talk about it. Is the kind of the UK media is one of the harshest critics, presumably because it sells papers. But I think the other sort of side of that is in England there is this kind of the overall kind of opinion, I suppose, is that of very sort of.
You still there, Adam?
Yeah, I'm still there. I was just waiting for Joe to reconnect.
See, it's Joe. It's not mine.
It's just removing for a minute.
It's one of them clouds that have just gone across the sky in his sunny little apartment opposite that beach, and it's just stitched him up there. Look.
There we go. Apologies.
The clouds move.
But no, I think there's just a big expectation on England, and I think it's a little bit unwarranted because we haven't, won major trophy, that many major trophies over the years.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of that expectation level is the thing that means that if people come into that England team, it's assumed that they're going to be the best 11 players in the country at the time, and it's not always the case. And obviously, that weight of expectation means that sometimes performances are a little bit less than what you get when you're in a community, i.e. your Premier League team that you're with week in, week out, and you can relax a little bit.
Yeah. I always felt that, Tuchel's first squad, it almost felt like a last chance saloon sort of squad, because he's brought back Carl Walker, he's brought back Jordan Henderson, he's brought back all the old guards, and it's kind of made me think that, I thought, oh, he's just bringing Marcus Rashford, another one. Like, I just think he's just done it because, like, he thought, right, Southgate's dropped these people. I'm going to bring them back and I'm going to make them into stars, and then see if they don't perform against Latvia and Albania, then I'll drop them. Like, I'll start to focus more onto the younger side of the team. But then I thought, well, he doesn't really need to do that. He's going to have a squad of 25 people for the World Cup next year if he qualifies. So a lot of players that go to the World Cup, like Ben White, didn't even get used for the World Cup properly. So Henderson being in the background as a registered player that could come on for 5 minutes in a game if he has to come on, could be what we lacked at the last Euros. So it's kind of that leadership.
If you think about what these games are, prior to going into these games, no matter which manager we had, there is an expectation for England to be beating Latvia and Albania. I don't think anyone kind of expects anything different. And I think for a manager coming in, particularly when you're trying to just improve the younger players, to have more senior heads around them, it just kind of creates this, I don't want to say more of an old school mentality, but more of a sort of a kind of, it increases the stakes, basically. It kind of, you're like, I don't know whether either of you guys have played much football at all before, but generally, the kind of the older lads are the ones that kind of take it more seriously and no nonsense, and you need a little bit of that. And I suppose if you're putting, even if these guys aren't necessarily getting too much game time, or if they are because Tuchel genuinely wants to see whether they've still got it or not, it's a benefit to the other younger players around them, because actually kind of it improves that focus and changes the way that they would look at stuff otherwise.
Actually, this has just occurred to me that you being a Chelsea fan and experiencing Tuchel under your sort of like being a fan, I completely forgot about this, but Tuchel's success was mainly because of the introduction of senior players. I mean, I think that summer, when Frank Lampard was in charge, he brought in Thiago Silva. Now, Thiago Silva could have easily been dropped by Tuchel at that point, but he wasn't. He was actually made a captain and a figure in that centre defence that actually made you win the Champions League. So maybe that logical thinking from club level to international level is probably something that we've not really realised. That could be the crucial part, the missing puzzle to England, is having that senior player, whereas we're always worried about the next gen coming through, and maybe that's that sort of different way of thinking about it. I mean, the next gen's clearly going to come through because of the talent that we've got. We all the way down to under 19s level. I think there's some world-class players at the youth levels, but when you focus on, we actually need to win something now. So why are we excluding people like Jordan Henderson, despite him being 34 years of age? So why are we writing them off when they've clearly still got something to offer?
I mean,
but also Thiago Silva is like world class. Like, you're not talking about a Mickey Mouse player. You're talking about.
I think he was 30. Was he 36 at the time when he signed for Chelsea? Didn't he?
But you say he's world class, but his debut against West Brom, you look at that, and another manager could just say, actually, you know what? Don't worry about it. He's not cutting it in the Premier League. He's had a stinker. We'll leave it.
But you could say, I don't know. You could say that about anyone. How many times Henry had a stinker, but he's still.
No, but I mean, like in Henry, I don't remember his debut for Arsenal, but I presume he didn't have a stinker. But he did.
He didn't score for the first 15 games or something, wasn't it? Or something like 30 games or something.
Okay.
I think his first goal was against like Southampton away or something, wasn't it?
It took him like
from
30,
left wing.
like 15 goals. I can't remember though. It was like nearly like 20. Was it like 20 odd games before he scored his first goal or something for Arsenal?
But presumably, you would say that. Oh, I mean, he would say himself if he were with us. The older players in the squad around him would have, had something to do with him kicking on and obviously developing as a player, and that I think is the key to focus on when you think about why he's doing stuff. I mean, obviously this is all speculation. Like Tuchel might have completely different reasons for bringing the older lads in, and I suppose as a fan you just kind of got to respect it and trust in that process. But
yeah.
I mean, you know, a 2-0 and a 3-0, it doesn't really tell us too much. So I think in a couple of weeks' time, it might, you know, or a couple of months' time, sorry, it'll hopefully become more apparent.
And
Joe?
also, when he was Bayern Munich manager, who did he bring in as one of his first signings?
He brought in quite an old Harry Kane, didn't he?
That's right. And you got the best out of him. Yeah. Even though he didn't win the Bundesliga to Leverkusen, but yeah. Sorry, Cal. I'll let you land. Go on, mate.
Do you think any of them players did take the opportunity? Would you say like, oh yeah, they took the opportunity to get into the next squad or next team, or who do you think from the older boys that you've mentioned, you know, did their job, if you like?
Well, like I said, I didn't watch either of the fixtures. All I've seen is certain highlights, and I mean, by the sounds of it, you know, like Rashford didn't do much. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he was quite vanilla. Obviously, he put on some good runs down the left, but other than that, it's just a very typical Rashford performance of late. Didn't really put up trees or whatever, but he didn't do bad. But he didn't cause the team to break down in attack or anything else. Yeah. Again,
he's been playing well for Aston Villa though. He's been playing well for Aston Villa. He had 2 assists.
6 assists he's had since signing for Villa.
How was Kyle Walker in the first game?
I wasn't too sure really. Again, like it's a lot of the focus in the game was of Miles Lewis-Skelly, so you kind of forgot Kyle Walker was playing effectively. But yeah, I think it's, like I say, pretty average. But again, it's, you know, it's still mid-season effectively, or coming towards the end of the season, and there's still a lot to play for in everyone's league. I mean, Kyle Walker's at AC Milan now, and they've still got, you know, they're still trying to put a charge on in the Serie A, and yeah, I just think it was a very risk-free sort of win on both accounts. I mean, it made it, you know, it kind of made it look hard work at times, but you know, we scored 5 goals, we kept 2 clean sheets. It almost feels like Moyes ball at the national level, but yeah, it's a very interesting sort of dynamic. But yeah,
this is where international is difficult, isn't it? Because you can't really have an opinion on how well the squad's going to be, because there are games. It's almost, you know, the games expected to win. It's almost like Arsenal playing. Well, saying that, I know, like we have lost against lower league teams, or, you know, but it's like Arsenal playing a team that are expected to win. You know, they can sort of almost go for it in second gear or third gear, and then you don't really know until they play a Man City, a Liverpool, or well, in our case, to be fair, Aston Villa or something like that, because they seem to always have our number. But you know, yeah, I mean, it's you don't know till you get a better opposition in front of you, do you? Really?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, let's go on to, let's say, Tuchel at Chelsea. I mean, what was your overall opinion of Tuchel at Chelsea, being a fan, Joe?
I mean, I was very, very happy, to be honest. It's kind of like our whole conveyor belt of different managers that we've had over the years, and that whole process of, you know, even if you're winning, you know, cups or whatever, you can be in and out within the space of a year. It used to. Well, I mean, it still does frustrate me big time. I mean, I was actually back end of last season when we started playing better under Poch. I was like, oh, great! This is starting to move positively. And obviously he's gone, and it seems like that whole thing has continued. But I think the circumstances with Tuchel were even more frustrating, because it's such a random set of circumstances that led to him leaving. Now he's a decent manager. We were playing good football under him, and also we were playing good football with players that have not necessarily done huge amounts since. I know obviously Havertz has been doing relatively well at Arsenal up until his injury, but players like Timo Werner, who's really not done much since, you know, like it was a bit of a sort of, I guess, a new team that he was dealing with, but it obviously worked, and the fact that we won the Champions League under him is bonkers to me, really. If you look at that kind of that that team that we were playing with.
That's what I was just looking at. I was looking at that lineup. But yeah, Timo Werner up front with Havertz and Mount as the 2 10s. And then you played a midfield 4 of Chilwell, Jorginho, Kante and Reece James. Then your midfield, your defensive 3 was Rudiger, Silva and Azpilicueta. I mean, that's not a young centre defence at all, is it?
It's not. I mean, it helps that he's got Rudiger in there because he's, he's absolutely rapid and can kind of mop up our the other two. And the other two are very good footballers. But yeah, like you look at that team on paper and you at the time, you would be surprised that they would have, done so well. And again, looking at them now, sort of players like Jorginho, like there are players in there that wouldn't even necessarily start in Nottingham Forest team at the moment, let's say.
Yeah. That's a fair point. Okay, so what do you want to talk about next? Do you want to talk about the Premier League?
Can I ask? Go
on, mate.
Hold on, Joe. What's your take on the board system and their transfer policy?
The youngster policy and stuff.
Yeah, because like I ain't got many
8-year
Chelsea
contracts.
fans, to be fair, and I just think like it'd be interesting to see what you like. Are you worried about it? Are you, do you think you're going to get nicked by the old, fair play?
I'm not worried by it because I think the people that are advising Bowley and everyone surrounding it is generally kind of maintaining that they're doing everything above board in inverted commas, sticking to whatever rules and regs there are there. There's obviously always certain things that come in that actually mean, hang on a minute, you have to either sell players really quickly or sell youth players. It's frustrating as a fan to watch really decent players come up from youth level and then get sold purely because obviously it's just profit. If you look at players like Gallagher was starting to really do bits for us. Callum Hudson-Odoi I think is one of our best players that's ever come out of Cobham, and when he left, again, absolutely gutted because it feeds into this frustration of what's like how this club has operated, even sort of prior to the Bowley stuff, really. But I think until the Premier League and FIFA bring in certain rules about how money is moved, I think it's I can't see why a club as big as Chelsea, knowing what rules and regs are there, would do anything other than try to use the rules in their best interest by doing things like super long contracts. And obviously, if that means selling the club hotel to a business owned by Bowley elsewhere to stay under that profit margin, then that's obviously what they've got to do. It's frustrating for me because again, it kind of feels like, well, why don't you just sort out your finances in the first place, like the more correct way? Why don't you have less players on your books? Why don't you have kind of more of a focus on the football side of things rather than the trying to make money side of things, which is what it seems like it is. But having said that, again, I'm looking at it from a slightly shorter term mindset, because the reason that we're doing the whole younger players thing is because we want to be competing for Champions Leagues and whatnot within the next sort of like 5-10 years and have a squad that is going to go through that. It's just the case that obviously at the moment it's not really proving particularly well for us because, like I said, those senior players that could come in and help the younger ones, they're not coming in. We needed to sign another striker beyond Jackson, and Kunku's obviously not necessarily doing much. But if you have a more senior striker that's there, even if they're not getting much game time, the amount that younger kids can learn from that, it's invaluable. And it's obviously the whole transfer policy means that's not happening. So it's a frustration, but I feel like I'm in a similar position to, I guess, how you guys were when Arteta first took over, because I feel like there were a lot of Arteta outs, and it's a long-term process, and that's exactly, you're reaping the rewards of that exact process now, which is why as a Chelsea fan I'm sort of hesitant to say anything, because I feel like, well, let's, as much as I've got to wait a little bit longer to see whether it's the right thing to do, then all I can do is wait and give them the benefit of the doubt, because I'm not in the room. I'm not making those decisions, and I'm sort of quietly optimistic, because I have to put my trust in this guy and his team, because they're in charge of my football team, and if I start, I guess it's the same with anything. If you feel supported at any level, you're going to do better than if you don't. And there's obviously a point after a while, if you've been given a lengthy opportunity, that the fans and the club will kind of turn on that. But I think it's important to try and hold out as long as possible, because it is a process.
Yeah. I find it quite interesting that you were the first club to put in the long-term 8-year contracts into players. And then when the first Premier League voting system come in, you were one of the clubs that voted against having 8-year long-term contracts and capping it at 5 years. So kudos. Kudos on that.
Yeah,
take advantage when you can, right?
Exactly. Hypocrisy is not uncommon in football or anywhere for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So who have you got this week then in the Premier League?
We've got Spurs, which to me feels like it should be a very winnable game. Having said that, I feel like a lot of their players are coming back from injury, so I think Romero, Van der Ven will be fit come next week. I think obviously Solanke's came back the other week. Their team I actually kind of do rate, although having said that, the last few games that we've played against them have been quite fun as a Chelsea fan.
Playing against 9 men as well, wasn't it? When they were still trying to attack gung ho.
It was just the extremely high line that they were playing at, whenever it was last season or season before, and it made no sense to me whatsoever. But I've always loved playing against Spurs. My mum's a Spurs fan, and historically we've always done quite well there. So fingers crossed. I'm optimistic, but at the same time, you never know. I know. I'm hoping Jackson's going to be back. Madueke, I'm not so sure about. Palmer, there's obviously chat. I mean, I think we've got is it Breuer, Jackson, Madueke, Palmer, and Kellyman have all got hamstring problems at the moment, and could rule all of them out. It's that side of things is frustrating, because when we've had to field different players, it's not necessarily gone as well as we'd hoped. But I think it should be a win. I think we'll be all right.
Cool.
What's your what score? What's the score?
Let's go for a 3-1.
Who scores your goals? Who scores your goals?
2 Jackson, and if he's fit, a Palmer. Otherwise, we'll see. 2 for Nicholas Jackson then.
You're guaranteed to score goals against Spurs. I think they just need so exposed at the back, don't they? And they're relying on the pace of Van der Ven to come and do a very high sweeper role, aren't they? So as I say, Spurs are very funny at the minute. I mean, a lot of them have quite become frustrated with the Ange Postecoglou ball sort of way of playing there, and I think I was watching a video earlier today, and they were saying that they want Javi Hernandez. I'm like, do they really honestly think that he's going to improve that squad? I mean, he's only worked with Barcelona and a team in Qatar, so I don't think he's the right man for it. I think if they were ever going to get a replacement, they need to look no further than Erik ten Hag, in my opinion. I think he's the Ajax connection between them and Spurs. I think it's ready made, and I believe years ago that they were after him at one point, but he opted to go to Man United. So maybe that could be the appointment that I would expect from Spurs to make. But they're just going to go with a massive name and then spend loads of money and flop again, aren't they? So, but then Levy
it's almost like the poison chalice,
isn't it? Yeah. But I'm not complaining.
No, not mine. No, happy days, mate.
Being the supporters of clubs that we are, we don't really want Spurs to do well at all. So we just laugh at them.
One thing that I think is proving problematic for them is probably the opposite of what we just talked about. Is that the spend. I think Chelsea have got this kind of overspend policy, but actually, in theory, if you spend money, then you stand to make it if you're buying the right players and whatnot. I think Spurs have always kind of been a bit cautious, and because of that, even though they've got, like I said, I would say a good team of 11 players if they're all fit, if their starting lineup's fit. Beyond that, they're struggling, and it's I feel like kind of the money that they've had in from certain sales hasn't necessarily been well spent, and it feels like there's a lack of investment in the player side of things. Obviously, like how many years ago they got the new stadium, and it's unbelievable, and it stands to generate money, but you could, your club could stand to generate money if it's competing for Premier Leagues and winning European competitions, and obviously that's not been the case. So maybe they're struggling a little bit from that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's completely different to our Arsenal when they done their stadium, didn't they? Like they took out all the loans, they paid back everything, and I think Spurs have gone down that route. They've taken out loans, and it's not £20 million a season that Arsenal paid all them years ago. It's £100 million a season because it's a £1 billion stadium. It's so they've got, they are quite overly cautious with their spend, but they spent £60 million on Dominic Solanke in the summer. I mean, you don't just put that money on the table for no reason, do you? So who's Arsenal got this week, Cal?
Arsenal got Fulham,
and it's at home, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it's at home. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that then?
That's what you told me before we come on.
So what's your thoughts on Arsenal then?
Again, like Joe said, it's a game that I would like to think that we should win. Oh, Joe's gone off. Oh no, he's back.
No, he's not.
It's that cloud again. Yeah, I mean, it's a game that we should be winning, but I don't know. International breaks are always difficult, it seems, for Arsenal. Normally because we lose players every international break, which actually, to be fair, we have Calafiori injured and who else is injured?
That's right. I remember you saying last week when he went off of a hamstring, is it, or Achilles or something?
Yeah. So normally we lose players over international breaks. So I think we've lost. I think
you lost Odegaard. You lost Odegaard, didn't you, on the season? Earlier in the season.
Oh God, don't make me panic. Yeah, Jesus. Oh, yeah, we can't lose the Messiah. God, that'd be it. Real Madrid would kill us. Well, they might do that anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's a game we should win. Let's be honest. Even without a striker, but like I keep saying, Marino, what's he got? Five goals in 7 games, or whatever it is, 4 goals in 6 games. He ain't got a bad record for a no striker, and I'd say most strikers at the moment would die to have that record. So even though we haven't got a striker, I still think he could do a job.
And he scored for Spain as well, didn't he, this week?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not being funny. Any other striker would be dreaming of doing what he's doing in the last 8 games. 7
or 8 goals now, isn't it? In all competitions.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So,
put that in your fantasy football, Joe. Imagine the points for a midfielder for scoring.
Yeah. I can't do it. I still can't do it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think we'll win. I mean, it was actually a question I was going to ask Joe. You mentioned a minute ago about strikers.
Yeah.
And Chelsea needing a striker or an experienced striker. Obviously everyone knows that Arsenal need one as well. But who'd you go out and get unless you're going to spend 200 million on an Isak or 150 million pound on an Isak, or I know Adam's got a few names that he throws about that potentially would be good buys, but I mean the strikers they're few and far between. It's gone on the days of people like the Drogbas, the Van Nistelrooys, the Henrys, the Ibrahimoviches,
Well,
Eto.
I think realistically, the types of players that we would be going for would be Williams,
because we're going to be competing against each other, aren't we? Ultimately, to get these blokes in, because I can't see either of us getting Isak. So, like, as you just said, sorry, as you're going to say, who we fighting for?
I think it would probably be a Williams, to be honest, in terms of our transfer policy. I would actually like to see Evan Ferguson come to our place, which I'm not sure how Adam will feel.
No, it's rubbish. Don't go for him.
But he deserves to be playing more football. He's a decent young player that kind of fits in with what we're trying to build. Personally, I would actually, I would like to see Ivan Toney at Chelsea, but it will never happen because he's a little bit older. That's what I think. I think that he's the type of player that, you know, would do things and could get quite a few goals for us. And I think it'd be the same for Arsenal if he went to Arsenal, to be honest. But you know, we'll see. We'll see how he feels. John Duran as well, unbelievable player. If he gets bored playing over where he is, then you know, I think Chelsea and Arsenal.
The thing is with Duran, he's got his entire career ahead of him, hasn't he? So he could earn as much money as he wants, and then if he ever wants to play football for fun, he can't he? And if he can play football for fun at the top, at the highest level, and not worry about wages because he's set for life, he's winning, isn't he? So, but he won't be coming back until at least 2 years' time because of all the Saudi tax, isn't it, with the UK government? So he's got to be away from British tax for 2 years before he can actually benefit from it. Because otherwise, he might as well just play for free, like what Jordan Henderson done. I completely forgot about Tony, though, to be fair. I mean, he seems to be doing okay out there, doesn't he? I think he's the second highest English goal scorer in the world, isn't he, at the moment?
Yeah. And I think, obviously, you know, I don't, having not played over where he's playing, I can't possibly say. But I would imagine that presumably the intensity is a little bit lower. Of course, obviously, the heat is crazy. But presumably having a season like that where you're playing against players that aren't necessarily international level all the way through the pitch. I know obviously, you know, there's certain players that kind of found their way into that league in general. But you would assume that it's a little bit softer on you as a human. And therefore, if you come back into a higher intensity league, it's not like having a rest, but it's like having a season, you know, when you're playing slightly different. You know, I couldn't say whether the teams that he's playing with would be competing for the championship or whether they would be like Prem teams, because I know obviously there's a lot of players that kind of have gone over there. But I would assume that the intensity is ever so slightly lower, and maybe, you know, if he were to come back, he would potentially kick on beyond what he has done in the past, which, you know, in the past in the Prem he's done very well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
you don't think Chelsea will go for a cheeky little bid for Harry Kane?
I don't.
I see him come.
He's available for 60, isn't he?
I think he's come back to the Prem this summer. He will come back to the Prem.
Liverpool's favourites at the minute, aren't they? Liverpool's favourites.
Tottenham. I don't think Liverpool's favourites now.
Liverpool's favourites at the minute, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I can't see him going Man United because I think they're still a long way on their journey. I don't think he's going to want to come to here to win something. No disrespect to Man United.
Imagine if he went to Arsenal. Imagine it.
I mean, I don't think he. I mean, I'd love him if he would, but like I say, we said this on other podcasts. Like, I would love, you know, just for the bants, you know. But I do think he's coming back to the Prem, and I know you mentioned Liverpool, but I can't imagine him playing for Liverpool, if I'm being honest with you. And I actually thought Chelsea might be a good shout for him. I actually was thinking, you know, coming back to London, he's got a house, I think in Loughton somewhere, or he had a house in Loughton. You know, it's not that far away. I thought that actually Chelsea might be the shout.
I think it'd work for him. I don't think we'd go for it, just purely because of age.
Even if he goes and scores 20 goals.
Look,
and you said about
me personally, I'd have him 100%. But I don't think our club, operating the way they are at the moment, will put money into that. You know, even if he is starting for us.
Yeah.
You'd make that money back so quick.
I agree. But unfortunately, I'm not in charge of Chelsea Football Club. That's my problem.
So Cal, what's your score predictions then for Arsenal Fulham this week? Sound of the ocean.
The thing is, right, do you know what? Yeah, I always try and go heavy and go, I want to say 4-0 or 4-1 Arsenal. But I reckon it might be a 1-0 job.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be a lot tighter than you think because Fulham are a good side, aren't they? Marco Silva.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying 1-0 because, again, as you just said, they're well organised. They know how to, they defend against Arsenal. And again, they're probably, I think they will try and come at us a little bit more than just doing a complete low block. But yeah, I think it will be a 1-0. And I think it'd be Marino.
Marino Dino again.
I think it will. I think it'd be a header. I think it header in.
There you go. Put your bets on that then. Marino header at the weekend. No, at the weekend in midweek.
Yes, midweek. Okay. Yeah. Who's West Ham got?
So West Ham have got Wolves away. For me, it's a massive 6-pointer, especially at the bottom of the table. We're pretty much safe. I mean, we're 17 points clear of Ipswich and Leicester, but I don't know. Yeah, being a West Ham fan, you can never write it out because I've seen worse things happen, and I've seen the other side of it happen as well. The Great Escape, for instance. But yeah, I think if West Ham avoid a loss, I think that's the relegation battle finished. If I'm honest, if we win, then that we could completely just, in typical Football Manager terms, sim to the end of the season, and then just kind of enjoy the games without any pressure, effectively, or try and finish above Spurs, which is always the be-all and end-all for our season every season. But you know what? I'm glad Joe mentioned he would want Evan Ferguson at Chelsea because I'm a big fan of Ferguson. I know he hasn't kicked on as much at West Ham, but still at the age of 20 years of age, and he's just come back from a pretty serious injury, and he's getting his match fitness under a manager he's very familiar with. I mean, I would be all over Evan Ferguson signing for West Ham. I would be, even at 50, 60 million pound at what they're quoting him at, because he's a legacy type striker, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, it's thingy to be seen, isn't it? You keep calling it. I think you're trying to manifest it into existence, Adam. I mean, he's got potential.
I am because I want him to sign for West Ham. I do.
I don't think he signs for West Ham.
No, I don't. That's why I'm thinking, being the optimist, that Potter is dumbing down his performances to play a bit of hardball with Brighton to try and get him cheaper than what he actually is worth. Whereas I think Brighton are probably a bit more savvy to that and thinking, no, actually, we could just sell him to Chelsea because if they want him, they'll just buy him, you know. But I hope that doesn't come back to bite us on the arse effectively because I think he's a good striker and he scored in the international break for Ireland. So maybe this is the start of him coming back to the Evan Ferguson that was the £100 million quoted player a couple of seasons ago. So, West Ham have lacked a striker of that ilk for a very, very long time since Dean Ashton days. But I'm hopeful Evan Ferguson signs. I am hopeful, but there's rumours that the club ain't going to opt for it, which is a bit disappointing.
Do you think
you think this week, I think he'd have to. Yeah, I think he'd have to start this week. Put Bowen back out wide, drop Kudus. I think Kudus has been terrible this season. I think there's a lot of scope there to change it up top.
But he scored this week, though, didn't he? Kudus.
Yeah, but anyone can score against Mozambique.
Yeah, fair enough.
No disrespect to Mozambique listeners out there. You know, all of our Mozambique listeners, I apologise. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Wolves are a good side. They've got Mateus Cunha up top, and they've got a fantastic centre half in Agadou. It sounds like a Black Lace song, but it's but he's a fantastic centre half, and if West Ham signed him in the summer as a centre back, I'd be well happy. I think he's quality, but he's just playing in a very tough Wolves side at the minute. But they've got some good players. They seem to always have a good scouting system and unearthing these little gems. And I think Wolves will be okay, even if the result goes against them this week. But in typical West Ham fashion, Potter ball, I think we'll draw 1-1 away at Wolves. So, what's your opinion on Potter then? Again, another Chelsea link here.
I feel incredibly sorry for Graham Potter, just because of how it was at Chelsea. I think he didn't fit in. I think he's, again, probably same with a lot of these managers. I think his philosophy was he was thinking a little bit longer term, but it seemed like at the time, because he wasn't a huge name manager, I think there were certain players necessarily that didn't get on board with him as well as they would have done.
Yeah. I heard that there was some sort of criticism from Bodie that he was too hands-on with players, wasn't he? Clad's come again, Cal.
What do you mean by too hands-on? Is that like? I think
it come on the fact that his man management abilities was. Oh, there he's back. there was a bit of criticism there that I read that Bowley was too critical of Potter being too hands-on and man managing the players when he was told he was a coach, not a manager, and I think that kind of restricted what his abilities truly are as what he is. But Joe, go on, continue, mate. That cloud has passed again.
But yeah, I think he basically just he again wasn't necessarily given the freedom, and it felt like he wasn't as in control of the players as he would have been had he come from somewhere like Real or been a bigger name manager, basically. I think he obviously did very, very good things at Brighton, but one thing you guys have probably noticed is most managers at Brighton have done very good things. And there's something beyond the first team coaches and first team management team that is clearly doing well for that club. The whole, they've brought through a lot of unbelievable players that they've got super duper, really, really cheap, and managed to make huge profits on. And maybe that's the reason that that the first team has been well, because of their sort of whole backroom stuff. They've recruited the right managers, and those are good managers. Or maybe those managers have a slightly easier job working with what's set in place for them, and perhaps obviously when they come to somewhere where everything's a little bit all over the shop, as it's kind of felt a little bit with Chelsea post Abramovich, maybe it's a little bit more difficult,
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Would you take Abramovich back?
Say again?
Would you take Abramovich back? Obviously, taking away all the craziness and all the
taking away all the craziness, absolutely, in a heartbeat. Why wouldn't I? But that craziness is a big thing. But not
just the craziness. I know there's more to it than just to brush it with that. Sorry, I don't. But
no, in terms of like Chelsea during the Abramovich era, it was like it came out of nowhere. I remember. I was going on holiday, I think, and I was sat on a coach, and I remember reading the newspaper, and I turned to the back page, and it said that Chelsea were in talks to spend £50 million on Thierry Henry, and I was like, what's happened here? This is obviously the first I found out about the takeover, but basically, pretty much consistently from that point onwards, we were in or amongst it. We were if we weren't winning the Premier League, we were winning the FA Cup. In instances we were doing well and winning Champions Leagues, and it's obviously it was an unbelievable time for the club that over time you get accustomed to and then get complacent with. And obviously now we're kind of back in this limbo position. It's a situation where obviously you want to trust in the guys at the top now, but it's a little bit more difficult. And therefore, if someone asks you that question, would you take that time back? Of course you would. Of course you would.
Yeah, because he made you the club of what you are, effectively, isn't he? Froze again.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Before he came in, they were. Let's be honest. I mean, they were up and down, to be fair, but they're also a mid-table team, really, weren't they? Let's be honest. I mean, if I remember right, they get relegated. I feel like they were relegated.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
No.
Relegated, haven't they?
No, not from Premier League. They haven't. Not from Premier League. They haven't. No.
Oh.
No.
Well, again, they were a mid-table team then. They weren't like, let's be honest, they might have had an FA Cup here or there, but they weren't ever challenging, were they? They weren't like, from what, before he came in, they weren't a team that I'd go, oh.
No, it was more. It was more like the Vialli and I think it was Ruud Gullit, wasn't it? Ruud Gullit was the one that brought sexy football in, didn't he, to the Premier League? And he brought in Zola, he brought in Vialli, Di Matteo, and then that was when he started building the Chelsea squad, didn't he? And then it obviously led into
that got us an FA Cup. It got us a Cup Winners' Cup, but it wouldn't have got us the league. And money did get us the league, and that's the thing that feels like a shame, but that kind of is how it works, which is why obviously there's now so much investment because there is scope to make it back.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of the first clubs that kind of changed since that takeover. It kind of changed the landscape of the Premier League, didn't it? Because with that sort of obviously the tapping up of Cashley Cole and bringing in Jose Mourinho and then buying all these superstar players for big amounts of money. Like he bought Andrei Shevchenko. I mean, he was one of the best strikers in the world. How he performed at Chelsea's different. Hernan Crespo, another one. Like he was just buying these names, and it was exciting. It was great for the Premier League because
it was almost like the Real Madrid,
these names and the branding. Yeah,
it was like the Real Madrid. It was like the Chelsea Galacticos, wasn't it? I just remember going, like, wow. In the sense of like the players that you had, do you know what I mean? Also, you having the era of Drogba. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I mean, he did win you leagues. In my opinion, I've just fantastic strike. I hated him when he played, but now looking back at him, I watched him a few times, and I remember watching him at Emirates. Arsenal Emirates. I think he scored a hat. I'm sure he scored a hat trick or 2 goals, and obviously you beat us. And I remember sitting there going, he's just an absolute beast, and he just absolutely bossed our defence. And I just remember sitting there going, mate, he's an old school, solid, fast, strong, finisher. And you could say about all the Galacticos you brought in, but Drogba was just having that as a striker was just fantastic.
Yeah. Did you have 2 spells at Chelsea?
He did very briefly, I think 2014, 15-ish, he came back. But I think, it was kind of, by that point, we'd changed slightly as a team. And I think, I kind of presume Diego Costa was there by that point. But
I was at Conte sort of period with him.
But no, that first goal, you're right. It was, he scored on the big stage as well. The amount of cup final goals that he scored, he's just so strong, an unbelievable finisher. And like you said, I think that the whole way that came about was, Jose Mourinho had spotted him at Marseille, and no one really knew who he was. And he went to Abramovich and said, Abramovich said, "Who is this guy?" He was like, "Mr. Abramovich, don't talk, just pay." And it was, the best thing that Mourinho ever did for us, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going on to that signings, obviously the big week, the big news topic this week is Trent Alexander-Arnold pre-agreeing to go to Real Madrid, leaving his boyhood club to go to one of the biggest clubs in the world. What's your thoughts on TAA going to join up with Bellingham at Real Madrid?
I think it's a good signing for everyone concerned. I think he's an unbelievable player. There's no doubt in that. There's been instances where his defending has been questioned, which is fair enough because you look at him and he's more like the stuff that he can do in terms of playing passes, scoring free kicks, like aggressively, looking forward is unbelievable. And because of that, I think, going to a team like Real Madrid, he's going to make an exciting team potentially even more exciting. I don't think he's necessarily, and like in terms of performances, and I guess as a right back, being a right back, I don't think he's necessarily got that long in him in terms of, like I said, sort of defensive performances. And Bradley, I think, is going to slot in and is will probably be one of Liverpool's better players straight away.
Yeah, I like
so
Conor Bradley a lot.
I don't think they're going to necessarily miss him, and I think it's great for Trent. I think I've not really spoken to many Liverpool fans about it yet, but I would assume that I think it's the same for any club really. If you're going to leave your childhood club, it's got to be for one of the best teams in the world, and I think Real have always kind of been labelled as that club, to be honest. Yeah, and Liverpool have come across this before with Steve McManaman because he left Liverpool to join Real Madrid. I think it was back in '99, didn't it? And probably one of the most successful spells of Real Madrid by having Figo, Beckham join, and Zidane and Ronaldo. I mean, and Steve McManaman about Carlos. Like it's insane to think that Steve McManaman played with all those stars, and it could be just unearthing that again in a modern era. But Cal, what's your thoughts on Trent leaving Liverpool?
I think Liverpool are going to miss him. I know you say about Bradley and Seinerfeld, but a lot of Liverpool fans that I've spoken to, are desperate for him to stay, as well as the other two that potentially could go in the summer. But I mean, I don't like to lose big names to other countries, or other leagues. Same as I don't particularly like Harry Kane in being a Spurs player, but him going to Germany again, England captain and that coming away from the I'm if I'm being completely honest, I'm just greedy, and I want all the best players to be in the Premier League. I want Bellingham over here. Along with some of the other players over there, just because I want to watch these players week in, week out and see can they do it in the Premier League. I've brought it up before, but I'm a bit gutted that Messi never came to the Premier League. I'm one of these fans that will say, could he have done it week in, week out? And I suppose his records and whatever would say yes, but we'll never know. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's always going to hang over his head, especially, in my opinion. At least Ronaldo came over here and showed that he could do it week in, week out and get kicked the crap out of and, go down to, a League Two team and play on a bog pitch and still go and score goals, which I'm sure Messi would do as well. But, I think it's a shame for the league because he is quality. But then again, it's if you look at international football and the English team going to play somewhere like Real Madrid, different culture, different way of playing, what could he bring back to the England squad? With Bellingham, getting that link up with Bellingham, is it going to be stronger? I mean, it's good for him. Don't get me wrong. If you speak to probably any player, they'd love to put the white shirt of Real Madrid or the claret and blue shirt or red and blue shirt of Barcelona. It's like a bucket list thing, isn't it? So good luck to him. Again, it just highlights, I suppose, British football or English football and where our players going. Because there was a long time where who would you name to go and play for someone like that? Maybe Rooney, maybe Rooney. Yeah, in recent times, Rooney, but it's probably the one I could think of. I know Harry Kane was rumoured to go Real Madrid. Younger. Bow. We had many really, have you? Let's be honest.
No,
My
no.
worry now is, in years to come, would it be Saka or you know someone like him? Because there's got to be a draw for Saka to go over there. I would assume at some point if he carries on doing what he's doing. Palmer would be another one, I suppose, in years to come. Especially if he keeps doing the things that he's doing. I know he's tailed off, with injury as well, the last few weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame. I'm just greedy. What about you, Ed? What do you think?
It's good though, really. I think because now you're getting more English exports now in European football. Because years ago, like you said, nobody would ever do that. But it's almost flattering to a sense. Like even the German clubs, they would be investing big money in their youngest English players to develop them to go further. I mean, it started with Jude Bellingham, and they bought him from Birmingham for 20 million quid, sold him for 80 to Real Madrid. They got Jadon Sancho, and I think they got another one of our, I think Gittins, isn't it? Gittins is playing for the under-21s. Like it's another one. So it's almost flattering to think that other clubs in Europe are starting to poach the best players that England have been producing. If I could get my words out. But yeah, I think it's quite good. I mean, Trent, go enjoy it, mate. That's all I can say. You've won everything you possibly could for your boyhood club. You're on the verge of winning your second Premier League for Liverpool to equal Man United's top flight trophy haul. You've won Champions League twice, is it? With Liverpool as well. Like he's lived his boyhood dream by the time he's 24, 25 years old. Go and enjoy your football elsewhere, and go and play for one of the biggest clubs in the world, and just enjoy it, because you've done the hard work, you've done the graft, you've lived your dream. Now go enjoy it. That's my thoughts on it.
I'm sure Real Madrid might think differently in the sense of you just go and enjoy it. They would probably just say the hard work starting, mate.
He's still, they're probably a higher level of expectation at Real Madrid, but they're going to be favourites for everything, aren't they? Like, even Champions League. Like, I hate to, don't want to piss on the parade, Cal, but like they're favourites. They're always favourites because they're the most successful Champions League club that has ever existed, and nobody can even catch them. No one can get even near them.
But like you say, Cal, the Trent going over there and training week in, week out with absolute superstars is going, when he comes back into that England setup, if he's involved, it's going to increase the level of what's there, and actually, it stands to, create a benefit as well. So
yeah, and just imagine the amount of vitamin D he's going to be having.
Yeah.
Because that always boosts morale, doesn't it? Okay, we'll go on
to. Go on.
Well, you should know, yeah. I mean, mate, I look at vitamin D and I get sunburnt. So going on to that, the
sunny
best
D,
three, a sunny D, yeah. Bloody hell, you're rolling back the years now, mate. So going back onto that, the Bosman bonus. I mean, obviously, free transfers now have always been hot topic since Jean-Marc Bosman being released from Stade Liège all them years ago. But the top 5 best free transfers in football history. This has been provided by GiveMeSport.com, and the ranking factors of this has been how many honours they've won since joining this club, the influence at the previous club, like how important they were, the difficulty of competition, and the profit made from them joining that club. So number 5 on the list is Luis Enrique from Real Madrid to Barcelona, and that was in '96. So again, that kind of was controversial in its sense there, because due to the rivalry between the two clubs. And going on to another rivalry between two clubs, number 4 is Sol Campbell. So going from Spurs to Arsenal in 2001. And again, another rivalry, number 3 would be Robert Lewandowski from Dortmund to Bayern Munich. That went down very, very badly, especially between, I think it was Marco Reus and Robert Lewandowski. They wouldn't even shake hands at the point, would they, in games, despite them being mates? So that was just mental. Number 2 on the list is Mbappe from PSG to Real Madrid. I mean, although he's only gone there from one year, but the profit margins of him going to Real Madrid, I mean, a tenfold. You know, the amount of money they've earned on that. And number one is Messi to PSG and leaving Barcelona in 2021. So that's the top 5 lists on there. Is there any standout free transfers that you can remember for your clubs?
Oh God, that's a question.
I mean, we tend to pay above the odds for everyone nowadays. So
Yeah.
I have to kind of go back a little bit.
I mean, there's one on this list, and it was Michael Ballack you got on a free from Bayern Munich, and obviously he's 10th on this list.
Unbelievable player, but while he was at the club, well, I say while he was at the club, yeah, he's a serial loser. I think is Michael Ballack. I think he's, as is my understanding, he's lost in more finals than anyone else, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, great player, and yeah, it was nice when he was nice when he was at our place up until the Champions League final when everything went to pot.
Moscow, wasn't it?
Yeah, penalty shootout.
Yeah. Mate, you've won it twice since that final, so don't worry.
Didn't we get David Luiz from Chelsea on a free?
I can't remember if it was a free or not.
I think we signed him on a free.
Maybe it was more of a gift.
But we got him on a free, and didn't he win the FA Cup with us the season after?
Quite possibly.
Yeah,
I think we'd sold him to PSG and then brought him back the season later, and then I think obviously he only did 1 or 2 seasons more with us, and then
I'm sure we got him on a free.
I think it was a fee involved in that. I think it might have been something very minimal, like 7 or 8 million quid. I think that number rings a bell for me. But yeah, I'll talk about Sol Campbell, Cal. I mean, you know, that's the most notable one for Arsenal, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, I mean, he could. Let's be honest. You know, him coming in, sort of, you know, taking up the reins from Tony and, you know, players before him. You know, him and Keown, just what a partnership, and obviously Invincibles. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? You know, he's just, you know, well, won us the league, you know, won us the FA Cup, you know, got us to the Champions League final. Yeah,
scored in it as well, didn't he?
Yeah, it's just fantastic, and let's be honest. Anytime you get one over Tottenham, sorry, it's magical, isn't it? Let's be honest. And he had, you know, and it still goes on today with the Google advert. You know, it's just, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Harry Kane to do that advert next year.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, I think I brought it up a couple of weeks ago with Sol Campbell. I think he's like the first. Is it black English player to score in the Champions League, or he's like the first 3, like the top, like the first. I think black British. I think
it was the first black British captain to lift the FA Cup as well. I think that was at Portsmouth.
And it's not even celebrated. And I think, you know, it's not right that it's not celebrated. I think he's more celebrated abroad than he is in his own in his own country. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, for Arsenal, he was just absolute talisman, a brute when he was massive. I mean, he was just, you know, big, strong, horrible. You know, win the headers that he could play out from the back. You know, and then you had Keown, who was almost just exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? You know, you talk about, you know, I've heard Van Nistelrooy speak about it. You know, going up against them was just, you know, they knew it was just going to be horrible. They would kick, you know, they could do the nasty stuff, the kicking, the pulling, the biting, grabbing, whatever, you know, however you want to look at it. But then they'd get the ball at their feet and be able to play it out. You know what I mean? So, you know, I think, to be fair, I actually think we've got that back with Saliba and Gabriel. You know, it's the first time we've had a partnership at the back where you sort of think, oh, you know, I mean, arguably, I think they should be winning something. I think it'd be a shame if them two don't win something together, because I think them two to magic is them two together is magic, and I think they're the yin and yang of each other. Where Saliba's that sort of, I know we call him the Rolls Royce. He's that calm and he gets the ball down and he plays and he looks like poetry when he plays. And then you've got Gabriel, who's that horrible, get in your face, bite you, kick you, stab you, whatever you can to get the ball off you, and and edit and scream and shout at you. And I think together it's just magic to watch, and I love it. I actually care more about them two than I love Gabriel, to be fair, than Arsenal going forward and playing that traditional football of beautiful football. I just love. I love. Adam hears me preach about Gabriel all the time. It's been a long time since I wanted to get an Arsenal.
I've not heard it, mate.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I wanted to get an Arsenal player's name on my back. But Gabriel is going to be that. I'm going to get his name on my back and the wall underneath it as well. But I just them two together it's just top draw, and I think they have got that Campbell and sort of Keown feel about them. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd probably still take Campbell now, to be honest, as a third option. I'm not going to lie,
mate. I'll take a tin of Campbell's soup at the minute.
Who's it back for you guys at West Ham?
Free transfer. I mean, there's so many, mate. There's so many. I mean, we've had some stinkers. We've had Benny McCarthy. We've had Mido on £1,000 a week. We've had, mate. We had Alvaro Arbeloa from Real Madrid, who played 3 games and then he kicked up a stink and then got dropped and released. We've had Patrice Evra. We've had Samir Nasri. I can't really say any of them have pulled up trees. If I'm going to say one, I'd say the best free transfer we ever made was Declan Rice from Chelsea. That's the best free transfer we ever done.
But this is the thing. We've let a lot of players go on frees, and it kills me obviously when they come back around and they're ballers, absolutely ballers. But
can I if it makes you feel any better, I feel like Declan Rice was a free transfer to Arsenal for 100 million.
Fuck off.
Because I think he's worth about 200 million. So for paying that, we basically got him half price. So I'm buzzing.
Yeah.
It's the first time a defensive mid has gone for like 100 million, and no one said anything about the price tag since.
No, because he's worth every penny.
Because it's like,
he's worth every penny.
He is. Okay, well let's wrap this up here. But before we go, Joe, tell us about your forfeit fantasy draft show with Evan. Plug it as much as you can and tell us the worst forfeit that you've done.
So we, my friend Evan Jones and I do a fantasy football podcast, which involves silly forfeits. So we play each other every single week head to head, and every single week we will establish a forfeit in the previous show that the loser has to do, which involve things like, I think week 1 I had to go do an escape room on my own. Week 2, Evan had to propose to me at 3 famous London landmarks. There's been a lot of things. It's kind of stemmed from basically a WhatsApp group that I used to do similar sort of things with my friends in the past. And in that, I've not introduced this into the show yet, but in that, there was one instance where I had to turn up at Primark at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and pretend I was there doing work experience for 40 minutes, which was just absurd because obviously I somehow convinced the assistant manager to kind of go along with it and give me this little, basically have me going around the store helping out and everything. But then there's been things like baking a cake and then throwing it in the bin, or escorting your mate to Nando's dressed as a bodyguard and just standing on the opposite side of the restaurant while, just like really, really, really silly things that you shouldn't really be doing aged 30 plus. But we do them because it's a laugh. And we've all got a bit of an inner child inside us. And because of that, we decided to make a podcast on it. It's called Forfeit Fantasy Draft. So please do check it out, FFD. And if you've got any forfeit suggestions, either of you now or at any other point, feel free to send them over, because there's very little we kind of said we won't do, and there's only 8 weeks left of the season now, 8 weeks, 9 weeks. So yeah, time's running out.
Joe,
Go on.
how long are you down under for?
I'm going to be back for the last 2 weeks of the season, so I think, and probably until like middle of May time.
You've got to go poke a kangaroo in you or something. That's got to be one.
That's all well and good, but if we agree on that and then he loses, that's quite an expensive forfeit for him.
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah, true, yeah. It's very expensive.
But yeah,
I was going to say, that'd be fantastic. Go and tap a kangaroo on the shoulder and run. That'd be absolutely fantastic. I'd pay to watch that.
Because they're massive, right? They're like,
yeah, I know. They're like,
yeah.
Just do a wallaby instead.
I'll pitch it to Adam. We'll see what he says.
Yeah. Well, when you're over, mate, let us know, and we'll have a meet up and have a drink up and stuff like that, and hopefully get Rob involved in his forfeit fantasy draft, because he's the king at the minute between us three. And I don't really want to suggest that any forfeits for any fantasy football involving us, because we're rubbish.
Yeah, I gave up on mine.
I think generally
what was your team?
I tend to get to October and then I'm like, my team's doing badly. But obviously with this, I've got accountability now, and it's killing me, to be honest.
Yeah, you know what? One forfeit I could suggest: drink a whole emu egg raw.
Oh, that's actually quite a good one.
That's
actually a really good one.
Like when you have to do like a Rocky, but you could do it like a whole emu egg. That'll be quite good, especially with Easter coming up as well.
To be fair, Adam, it's a good shout. I think that should be up there.
I was trying to think of something quite Australian. Mate, I'd love to see how we're going to get an emu egg over in the UK. That'll be amazing.
Oh, listen,
I just have to bring it through customs with me, won't I?
Just hold it like a rugby ball. Well, how many normal eggs are the equivalent to an emu egg? That could be the alternative.
Not a question I've ever thought I'd be asked, but I imagine quite a lot, because they're huge. They're like full on. Yeah, I don't know. A lot. That'd be horrendous.
Good luck with that, Joe.
Well, I'm going to be viewing that.
But no, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on, and good luck with the rest of your thing.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Joe. Thanks for coming on. We'll definitely do another show with you in the future. I think it's been very, very refreshing to have another supporter come on, and when Rob's available, obviously it'll be good. It'll be a good crack as well. So, yeah. Now, thanks again, Joe. Thanks a lot, mate, and thanks to all our listeners for joining. And catch us next week. See you later.